Hi, everyone. So this week we have something a bit different from the regular posts. Today I'll be interviewing Ali Gowani, who will be sharing with you his expert views on the prominent field of data science, discussing the importance of AI education, as well as addressing other AI-related topics. Ali Gowani is a seasoned scientist and strategist with a passion for artificial intelligence and machine learning. He has a master's in data science from Northwestern University and is currently the president of the Student Leadership Council at this university. Ali was also the director of AI and ML at Amplify, a company harnessing the power of AI to drive improved workforce performance and customer satisfaction. And he has recently accepted a workforce intelligence position at Amazon. So thank you so much, Mr. Gowani, for joining us today. I'm really excited to hear your insights. And before we get started, is there anything else that you'd like to add about yourself?
And nothing to add, Aashika. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of what you've done with Acadaimy and your mission to help students in middle school and high school learn more about this space. So I'm a big fan of you and your organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. So in your perspective, how would you define data science and artificial intelligence to a middle or high schooler who is just beginning on the journey to learning AI?
That's a good question. And the way I would do that is by breaking it down. So with data, that essentially means information. And science, what we're doing there is using a pragmatic, methodical approaches to understand data or to synthesize data. And so at a high level, really the idea of data science is just to understand the data. And then from artificial intelligence perspective, use that data to guide our actions or help in our decisions.
Right. Awesome. So what inspired you to get started with AI and data science?
It's a good question. So, one of the things that I've always been passionate about is technology in many ways, but as technology and business models continue to evolve, one of the things that at least I saw was becoming more vital in organizations, especially when it comes to making decisions, was math and sciences, particular data science. And so when we started off our careers, we were really focused on descriptive analysis, right? We had dashboards and reports and other mechanisms to help us understand what we have done. But there was very little, if any, sort of ways or mechanisms to understand what we should do. And given that there is no necessarily, something that gives us 100% sort of prediction, it at least helps us guide our decision making. And so that was one of the reasons I decided to leave my previous consulting organization to pursue a degree in data science at Northwestern University.
Those are really good points. And you kind of touched on this with your answer to the last question, but what do these fields, AI and data science, mean to you now? And where do you see them headed in the near future?
So I think the way I would describe what it means to me is ubiquitous. I feel like that it is universal. It's happening everywhere. Yeah. And it's just not like fintechs or high-tech sort of companies. You're seeing nonprofits come talk about this as well and seeing how they can leverage data science and machine learning to help guide their decision making in their own missions. And so I do see that they are becoming something much more of a norm. From whether it's an application or an organization, you're not asking people, are you going to use data science today, or are you going to use AI today? There's inherent sort of understanding that in some way or shape you're going to incorporate this into your reports, into your decision making processes, into your output, whatever that may be. So, where I see it right now, I think it's everywhere. And where I do see it, head in the future, I think it's going to be in various organizations that we haven't even thought about.
Totally agree. So in your opinion, how should school systems prepare for this trend?
I think it's probably fairly common for people to just shift and say, well, that's math and science. We define data science as such, so why not just focus on that? But I would implore the viewers, and followers of your organization as well as students to look at ways to incorporate not just interdisciplinary skill education or skills, but interdisciplinary. And what I mean by that is try to complement math and science with some other passion of yours, whether that is arts or performing arts. I think you're a dancer and you focus on that as well. And so you can definitely see how you are doing the same thing, and something that I would ask others to also think about as a way to complement your efforts in AI and data science in general.
These are awesome insights. I'm taking notes here. So how have you done this at Northwestern through the Student Leadership Council?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, the Student Leadership Council in itself wasn't something that was handed to me. It was something that I had proposed to one of the assistant directors at the Northwestern's data science program, Beth Lair, and said, hey, would this be something that would be of value? And she said, we're thinking about this as well, and let's make a run for it.
Right.
And so this Student Leadership Council is still fairly nascent. It started about a year and a half ago, it hasn't even been 2 years yet. And so, one of the ways I've done this is that while my academics was focused strictly on data science, being able to create events and do mentoring and lead people is something that will complement my data science skills. And so over the years, we've had really amazing companies, from top tier consulting firms to high tech companies and others, come and talk about what they're doing. And so it really allowed us an opportunity to help each other along the way while learning data science from a fairly prestigious institution like Northwestern.
Sounds awesome. Very nice. And so kind of going along those lines, what do you think are the job prospects or opportunities for students that focus on AI in college or school?
Yeah, I think the prospects are tremendous. I think in the past 6 months, you're seeing a dire need of talent in all levels across the industry, right? So it doesn't have to be just data analytics. It could be data translators. It could be data engineers. It could be machine learning engineers. It could be those that are just leaders that understand this space and have that sort of mindset. But I would even implore our students to think more broadly. So even as you pursue a degree in data science, for example, or something in that realm, whether it's statistics or something of that sort, I still want you to think more broadly, because a lot of times what's happening now is that companies are not just being formed because they have an AI model. I was speaking with a class in machine learning to MBA students at Southern Methodist University, which still blows my mind that MBA students are learning about machine learning. And I'm not talking about just theoretical, but they were actually coding. And one of the things I share with them is that, companies are not just started to build an AI model or AI, a machine learning model. That's like saying, hey, I know how to make a chart, or I know how to make a report. But how you infuse that within your application, within your customer experience, within your value add of your product is what's more important. So it's not just about, well, I know how to run a model. Well, that's great. But, as I tell people, that a model on the shelf is worthless. And so you think about how you're going to apply this model into daily needs of people around the world.
And so how has your experience at Northwestern, both the master's as well as your work at the Student Leadership Council, helped you shape your industry career in AI?
It's a really good question. I think, when you're pursuing a degree in data science, you're hoping for a positive outcome, and you want to make that sort of pivot into that realm. And so it was just, fortunate that during my master's program, and if your audience or viewers pursue a master's degree, you'll come into a situation where you have to at least, prepare to do a thesis or do a capstone. And so a capstone meaning, essentially your last course where you're trying to showcase what you learned over the past couple of years. And so when it was time for a capstone, I reached out to various venture capital firms and some contacts in the industry and asked whether they can connect me with someone in the startup world. And so I got connected with the founder and CEO of Amplify, Sean Mincher, and him and I had a brief conversation. And he said, what do you think of, helping us with, and proposed a couple of ideas. And we ended up engaging my capstone team to go do that. And the idea was to predict customer performance. And so Amplify, which is really there to improve the performance of contact agents, think about customer service agents around the world. How do we improve their performance? And so we were creating a model that would predict their performance at any given week. And this was a regression model, which, by the way, ended up being a horrible model. So don't do that. But what it did was it allowed us to learn from it, and we were able to shift that regression model to a classification model, which was amazing and tremendously successful. So, I would say a lot occurred during Amplify and what we've done there. And then more recently, I would say with Amazon and the workforce intelligence space, I'm still new to the organization, so still trying to understand that. But nonetheless, the idea is that Amazon, hires over 1 million people a year, right? It's a global organization, a massive organization. And so, shame on us as Amazonians if we can't figure out how to attract and find the best talent, how to empower and engage our talent, because we hire more than just about anyone else in the world. And so it's, really amazing and global and highly scalable sort of solutions we're thinking about at Amazon.
Very cool. Awesome. And so how much do you think AI has penetrated companies such as Amazon, as you were just saying, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc.?
Yeah, I think the fact that they're high-tech companies, right, and they're part of that FANG environment, I think a lot of the mindset is to look at data, and then more importantly, look at predictions or models to guide us in that sort of in that functional area within the organization. So I think that there's deep penetration within the organization, but I think there's more room for entrenchment. So a couple of examples I will give is that, while applications, are everywhere and data is everywhere, processes are still rudimentary. And so as Amazon has scaled quite tremendously, there's still some processes that can be improved upon. And those processes that we have not even touched or thought about are not using machine learning or AI or even just data science principles. And so there's tremendous opportunity for that. So I wouldn't say that, they're the pinnacle and they can just, sit on their laurels. I don't think that's the case at all.
And then shifting gears a little bit, going back to kind of the advice for younger students interested in AI. So knowing what you know today about AI with all the experiences you've had, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would, say something that I kind of mentioned earlier, which was to really think of ways to complement your math and your science degrees, whether it's art or other passion that you may have. And it doesn't have to be. I still remember during my undergrad tenure, at SMU, and I remember the interviewer asking me, "Hey, Ali, you pursued 2 degrees. Why?" Right? And they were kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One was technology, and the other was finance. And it just so happened that I was interested in both. And so I would say, if it's math and science, amazing. And if there's more that you're also interested in, by all means, do it. And one other thing I would share is that, look, if math and science isn't something that interests you, that's okay too, right? And so you can still be involved in that AI space and data science space, because one thing we've agreed, it transcends all functional areas. So even if math and science isn't your thing, perhaps arts is, or perhaps, social work is, or other amazing, career paths, then focus on that, but know and realize that somehow you will be learning or infusing math and science into the organization.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add, is that, I think there's a passion of continuous learning. So even now, right, I have, I still make note cards, I still study, we still have to do these things. And I think it's more important, not because I have to, but because I want to. And so, I would really encourage your audience and your viewers and students in general, that if they are passionate about it, go at it wholeheartedly. And if you're not going at it wholeheartedly, then maybe think about, perhaps there are some other opportunities for you. Because in the end, I think, Aashika, think about it this way, right? I think in the space is so broad, like we don't all have to be like AI generators. Like we don't all have to create models. Like, model is just one sliver of an entire ecosystem. That's what sometimes makes the news, when models are able to, generate facial recognition or are able to create facial features or what have you. But then, there's also AI consumers, right? People that synthesize that information and figure out a way to apply it in their organization, right? And then there are also AI sharers, people that are there to inform a wider audience, right? Whether that's through storytelling or some other ways. So, there's a space for all the people and to your audience or otherwise, to be part of the space. And it just doesn't have to be math and science, so to speak.
Great advice. So what's one good book that you'd recommend for a college student or a high schooler or middle schooler just beginning this journey with AI?
There are tremendously a lot of books that I enjoy, and some of them, you'll notice isn't isn't necessarily focused on AI by any means. And so,
Right.
but there is one that I do like, and it's called
Mm-hmm.
"Competing in the Age of AI" by Karim Lakhani. He's a
Okay.
Harvard professor, really, astute individual that understands business and how that is being impacted with AI. So, it's a little bit more business centric, but something that I think a lot of leaders and executives have appreciated that output. The other one I would share, and this probably doesn't have much to do with data science, but nonetheless, I think it does help your students to understand what they may want to pursue and the path they may want to take. And that book is called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstien. And the really interesting about that book, Aashika, is that it gives examples on, how you would think that there are people such as Darwin that must have been, very specialized in natural sciences. And they must have started that from the early age, and that's how they became so good. It wasn't the case. He was going to become a religious scholar, or that there are others that, like sports athletes. Well, we know about Tiger Woods, for example, picking up a golf club at the age of 4 or what have you, or maybe he was born with it. I forget how it goes, but nonetheless, picking it up at an early age. You see and you hear about other sports stars like Federer that started his tennis journey much later than that, when he was in his teens, which is essentially unheard of. It's too late at that time, but nonetheless they were able to pivot and focus on what they're passionate about. And a lot of times students and others may feel like, hey, look, there's too much of a sunk cost, meaning that they went down the path of math or science or AI or something. 2 years in their undergrad, they realize that's not their passion. They have a very difficult time kind of stepping back and pivoting. And in this particular book, the book says, look, if it's not your passion or something you're truly interested in, that's okay. Leave the sunk cost and move on to something that you're passionate, because you will springboard or you will leapfrog others that may be in that new field. So both of them books are really good, and I would highly recommend either one of them.
Amazing. I'd love to read them, and also link them in the description box below. So yeah. And then kind of along these lines, what's one good online course that you'd recommend?
Yeah, one is tough. I think there's tremendous resources everywhere. There are people like in Udemy that are doing this, as solo enterprises. Khan Academy is a no-brainer. And then one I would suggest would be Pycaret, which is a low-code machine learning library in Python. Is from someone that I really appreciate. His name is Moez Ali, and so I would definitely encourage your students to check it out. But the other thing I would say is that just even learning about some basic fundamentals like querying a database like SQL is also foundational and fundamental to such an extent. I think my first interview was about, hey, can you query this database, or how would you go approach querying this database?
Oh, got it. Okay.
Even though I'm sure 90% of my role has nothing to do with querying a database, but nonetheless, whether it's good or bad interviewing practice, those are some fundamentals that I think students should learn. So if they are looking at opportunities to learn something new or learn something online.
So thank you so much for this valuable information. And now we'll just have a quick segment where I'll ask you 5 rapid fire questions where you can kind of just give a 1 or 2 word answer based on what you think. So the first question is, with an exponential increase of AI technology in society, such as self-driving cars and facial recognition devices throughout, which do you think will reach first, a technological barrier or a psychological barrier?
Oh, that's a good question. I think if you asked me this maybe years ago, I would say psychological barrier. But I think we're becoming a lot more accustomed to accepting the fact that we have to change our mindset and have to just move on with it. And so I think I don't think the psychological barrier is as of great as it once was. There's still notions of ethical AI and things of that sort that we still need to address, and I think those are challenging, complicated areas that we need to address as a society in general. But I think the technological barriers are still there, and I think there's only opportunities for us to further improve in those areas.
Yeah, and kind of along the lines of what you just said, the second question is, which is a more pressing challenge today, ethics in AI or accuracy of AI predictions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was referencing earlier about, speaking at this class not too long ago. And so sharing a case from Amplify, and I was telling the students, look, flipping a coin is 50%. So a model has to be better than 50%.
Right.
100% is God. So if you're anywhere in between, like it's great, right? And so, and I'm being a little bit facetious there, but I think accuracy is important. But I think you're seeing a lot more challenges in how we use data and how we use it in a manner where it follows some sort of ethical paradigm. Now, what's interesting is that because these models are essentially universal, right? You have all these, machine learning models that are available to anyone and everyone in some ways. How people, organizations, and countries use to leverage the model is going to be different. And so I think we need an ethical paradigm so we can understand saying, hey, look, we want to receive outputs from this model, from this organization, because while it may not be as accurate, we believe it's in the right sort of ethical framework.
So which of these will gain prominence the fastest? AI in healthcare, AI in finance, or AI in manufacturing?
I want to say all of the above, and that's a very tough one because I think with COVID, you see a lot of stuff happening with healthcare, but then with a lot of the fact that we had a lot of healthcare sort of challenges in the past year or two, you're seeing a lot of shift in e-commerce, and a lot of people are purchasing and doing transactions through fintech companies and online companies. And then manufacturing, I think the fact that we've shifted so much into manufacturing, because of pandemic and other things, I think that's a very challenging one. But if I had to pick, I would say there's a lot of great opportunities in manufacturing, primarily because of infusing machine learning and robotics. And so I think there's some great opportunities there.
Yeah. So which of these roles do you think will be the most relevant in 5 years? Data scientists, machine learning, or do you think both will be gone?
Gone. I don't know if I would say gone. I wouldn't say that everyone needs to do those roles either. I think they're both important. I think with machine learning and data engineers and machine learning engineers, you're seeing this notion of auto ML. And so you're saying, hey, look, do we still need machine learning engineers if you can click auto ML? I mean, even I was showing these to students like, hey, look, even your Excel program, your Microsoft Office program has a checkbox that says, do you want to add a linear regression line, right? So do you want to fit a line into your chart? But I do still think we would need a lot of machine learning engineers and data engineers in general. And then from a data science perspective, I think it's very vital that leaders and decision makers in organizations understand that paradigm, understand statistics, understand how sampling works, how some of these things work, just so that they have a sense of what they're looking for, or at least understand the assumptions that were made to generate that chart or generate that model. And so I don't think either one of them will go away. And if anything, I think they'll become more prominent within the space of data science and AI.
So this one's a little bit different. So I'm going to give you kind of a scenario, and then a question will follow it. So you're an intelligent AI bot, and you've just been placed at the entrance of an airport. What's one creative thing that you tell the airline passengers entering the airport when you see them?
Oh, that's a good one. It's interesting. We talked about ethical AI, right? My first notion is to, hey, look, scan the person's, face and see what part of the world they're on. But I'm not sure if that would fall within an ethical, framework. I think there are a couple of things that I would really think about. I mean, it's a good, sort of creative thought experiment that you've outlaid here. One would be to think about, can we still use, image or computer vision? Can we still use that to identify passports so that we know, where the people are coming from, maybe for security purposes or what have you, and not necessarily scan the passports like you would when you're within the airport or within the ticket agent. The other thing would be really interesting to see is because we can identify objects. I imagine suitcases are very easy to identify. And so, maybe we can then start funneling people when we see a lot of passengers come in from a particular gate or a particular area, move baggage checkers or ticket agents in that area, just so because we expect there to be some delays. So I would say those two things pop up in my mind, though, to be quite frank. The one about recognizing facial and maybe, conversing them in a particular language, I feel like might have some ethical questions that need to be addressed.
Right. Yeah. Those are both really creative, though. Nice. Yeah. Okay. And then second to last question. So if you can think of one person as awesome as you who I could potentially interview on this show, who would it be?
Well, I don't think he will be awesome as me. I think he's much better than me. So I think you should definitely have him on your show. I think the one person I really enjoy conversing with and just been a big fan of is Moez Ali, who's a founder and creator of Pycaret,
Oh yeah.
along with his team, like Antoni Baum and Nikhil Gupta are just amazing people. And they're really trying to cultivate a community where you don't necessarily need to be a coder to generate models, and you can still engage with the Python language, and do that. So you can still kind of get your hands dirty without needing unnecessarily needing to code from scratch, so to speak. So I'm a big fan of them, and I think you should definitely have them on your next show.
Yeah, they sound awesome. I'd love to. And then how can people get in touch with you?
That's a great question. I think LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me, though. I will caveat that and say, do put a disclaimer, or at least information that, hey, you're referred by Aashika, or you're coming from Acadaimy or something, just so that I don't miss your notification. So I would definitely say that will catch my attention.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. So I'll link your LinkedIn also in the description box. Okay. Well, that was pretty much it. Thank you so much for your insightful thoughts and comments. It was wonderful having you here. I've definitely learned a lot from you today. I've taken some notes, and I'm sure the Acadaemy audience will as well. So thank you again for your time and insights.
Thank you for having me. This was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.